everybody. Welcome to another episode of Orange Grove 55. This is part 2 of the Q&A. And I brought my good friend, Mr. Disney Family Man 23, to answer some of your questions. Now, before we get started, I do want to say, if you have a question for a future Q&A, comment with your question below and it might show up on a future video. All right, so let me introduce my good friend and my guest, Mr. D Family Man 23. How you doing today, George?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I enjoy being on your channel, talking Disney, talking Marvel, talking Star Wars, and love getting those Q&A questions because I love answering them.
Yeah, it's a lot. I love Q&As. I got to start getting into doing more of them because I do love interacting and having those questions. Some of the best stuff comes from viewer questions, so it just opens up a whole plethora of conversations. So it's very, very interesting. So we're going to dive in. We're going to start off here with Stuart Rayfield. First question of the day from Stuart, and he writes, should Walt Disney Animation Studios be more experimental in their animation styles for future films? George, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I thought this was very an interesting question when you showed me like all the questions that could be used for this part 2. And this one kind of caught my attention because I believe that we were having this conversation before, sort of like how with the Disney Animation Studio, sort of like how they did with Luca and the new movies coming out. They sort of now kind of maintain a certain animation style where it's sort of like a one key note. And I'm just so used to Disney kind of going off the field of, trying different things and experimenting with different animation, even when it goes all the way back to the 2D, the 2-cell animation that we all loved, especially in the Renaissance era. Of Disney in the 90s with Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and The Lion King, where you can differentiate those films from, say, the 70s and the 80s of Disney animation with The Rescuers and The Black Cauldron, and even into the early and late 60s of The Sword and the Stone. You could kind of see that type of animation style with that era. And then you even go back further with Cinderella, Snow White, and you see that type of animation. So I think to have a different style, but yet they're so cohesive, and
Right.
you can tell a Disney film to say, oh, okay, that Snow White is a Disney film, Beauty and the Beast is a Disney film, The Rescuers are a Disney film, but yet during their time era, that you can tell that what era it came from based off of the animation that you see. And I think that Disney kind of strayed away from that for a while. And I really think that they should expand the notion, because I remember there's a Disney short that kind of used more of a 2D mixed in with computer animation, but it still showed as 2D. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Paperman.
I have. I loved it.
I absolutely loved that animation. And I actually asked an animator when I was touring the studios, and I said, we got to see, because I went to a Destination D event for D23, and we got the first viewing of Paperman before it was released. And I asked one of the animators, I said, with this rendition of this type of animation style, would you actually use this for a full-length feature film? And he actually said, we have tested it for several films, and it was actually going to be a kind of spoiler alert, but it never happened anyway, so I guess it wouldn't matter. That's actually the way that Frozen was supposed to be. Frozen was supposed to be in the style of how Paperman was. And it just never really worked out that way, and they kind of used the animation, which, don't get me wrong, the Frozen films are completely phenomenal. I mean, it became a phenomenon in its own right, but it just makes me feel to say there are so many different styles of animation, and I would love to see Disney kind of stepping away, even like with the Hayao Miyazaki films, like when you see Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away, you could tell that those are his films based off of that animation style. And I think by taking an art style based off of whatever the storyline is, like if it's based off of Asian culture or Native American culture, it fused that type of animation style so it fits the storyline better. And I think that's maybe why some of these films coming out, when it's relating to an orientation where it's based off of an Asian culture, or maybe it's a Philippine culture, that I think if they infuse the animation style, I think that the storyline will kind of blend well with that type of art style.
Yeah, 100%, Dre. Oh, I'm getting a little bit of an echo. I'm not sure if that's.
How's that?
That's perfect. So yeah, 100%. And look, like you mentioned, in the past, whether it be the Renaissance era, whether it be Walt Disney's era, we saw more styles of animation. I mean, if you look at the style of Cinderella compared to that of Sleeping Beauty, there's a vast difference there. And then you compare that to what you said, like The Rescuers or 101 Dalmatians. Disney has always kind of experimented, but with the advent of CGI, it was sort of like they kind of settled for just a monolithic style, and it was like a race to how real can we get kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't change their style at all. And now things are changing, and I'm actually very, very happy. You're starting to see, because now, really, once you hit a certain level of realism with CGI, there's only so far you can go, right?
Yes,
so there's
absolutely.
there's only so real you can get. So I think we've kind of hit that wall now in terms of realism, and now these studios like Pixar are starting to experiment and dabble in a little more of stylizing their films. We saw it with Luca, a very stylized film. The new film coming out, I think it's called Becoming Red, I believe.
It's Becoming Red or Turning Red. One of Turning Red.
Yeah, is also more stylized. I think that's the future of animation now. I think they're going to utilize CGI still, but they're going to incorporate more styles of animation. Even even the new What If series from Marvel, it's computer, but it's stylized a different way. It's not.
That's almost sort of like a Paperman rendition, a little bit. Minus a little bit more. It's less animated. Right. That's not even a word, but it's less animated. But you can kind of see the outline of the characters, of how you could see the 2D cell animation, but you can also tell that with the of how the computer animation goes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the future of CGI. Is a more stylized approach, and I'm all for it. I want to see more.
I am too.
Yeah,
especially with Luca, because of the setting of that film. That type of animation fit well. I can't foresee Luca being realistic, where it actually looks like a real human being. It fit well with the setting, with the storyline.
It really added to the charm of the story.
It really did.
That was a beautiful little movie. It was a beautiful little movie,
and it did much better than what a lot of people think. That the fact that it got released on Disney Plus without, being on Premier Access, but it got a lot of views.
It did. It's actually performing very, very well on Disney Plus, and I hope that Bob Chapek sits up and takes notice of that. Maybe the next Pixar movie will get a theatrical and a Premier Access kind of treatment. I think that Pixar is a fantastic studio. It's a wonderful studio led by an amazing creative, Pete Docter. It's time to give them a little bit more respect, in my opinion. Look, I'm all for Premier Access. I don't necessarily think that these films need to go directly to theaters, but at least give them a pay option. I mean, at least give Pixar something. So, I think that I hope they take notice of that success with Luca. And hey, we're both Italians, man. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, Luca hits close to home, right?
It does. It really
hits close
does.
to home. So Stuart, thank you so much for that question, man. That was a really, really great question.
Good. Yes.
Fantastic. So let's go ahead now and dive into question number 2, which is kind of a doozy. Here we go. All right. So, Disnerd Podcast writes, how will Emma Stone signing to reprise Cruella in her sequel impact the ScarJo lawsuit? I'm going to start off with this, and then I'll let you dive right in.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Go for it.
Okay. So with this one, here's my thoughts on this. It might be an unpopular opinion. Okay. Disney and Bob Chapek has mentioned it even in the quarterly earnings report the other day, right? He said that Disney has made hundreds of deals negotiating these contracts. Like a Disney podcast says here in the question, Emma Stone recently negotiated a contract for Cruella 2. We heard news, I think it was last week, The Rock renegotiated the contract with, or he not renegotiated, but he was happy with what was made for the Jungle Cruise, right? So Disney is able to contact all this talent, and they're able to negotiate and sort of work stuff out with all this talent, right? But for some reason, Disney woke up one day. Bob Chapek woke up one day and said, "You know what? Let's just fuck over ScarJo for no reason. You know what? Just stop returning her calls. Let's just fuck her over and ignore her calls." Honestly, is that what's really going on here? I really find it hard to believe that all these actors and actresses managed to work something out, but ScarJo she gets ignored. Like there's some big conspiracy against her in particular. Here's my thing, and it might be an unpopular opinion. I think that Team ScarJo is leaving something out of this equation. She's probably asking for something that's kind of out of pocket or something that's why the negotiations kind of stalled out, and that's why Disney kind of walked away. There's something they're leaving out in this equation, in my opinion. They wouldn't just target ScarJo and ignore her for no reason,
I absolutely agree. And I think this is what happens automatically when you have a contract, whether it is on the verge of being breached or not. Mm-hmm. You're automatically going to set up a meeting with both parties, and you're going to sit down to negotiate or renegotiate that contract before it is breached.
Right.
So automatically, before the lawsuit came about, ScarJo and her people had to literally sit down with Disney to go over the legalities of what all was involved. Something happened in that meeting that, as you said, was not released to the general public. Yep. Because whatever happened in that meeting, that's what brought on the lawsuit. And for it to go forth, even after Emma Stone, whether Disney approached Emma or Emma's people approached Disney, however it was meant to be, then they came up with a new contract because of whether, at the time, yes, all these contracts that were made, you have to think, a movie isn't made in 6 months.
Right.
These contracts are made several years prior to even production, whether it's pre-production, post-production, filming, editing, whatever. These contracts are written way before they even start the casting process to actually get the person to sign the contract. So now, that being said, with all those contracts being made, that was pre-COVID. So not to kind of put the spotlight on COVID again, but, it was probably something that was overlooked. Yeah, if Scarlett Johansson wanted to bring it to Disney's attention to say, hey, you know what, I feel like I got gypped out, I think Disney would have been over the moon to say, okay, you know what, let's fix this. Because if they weren't, they would have never done any kind of negotiation with Emma Stone. There would have been no negotiation. She would be in the same boat. So why is the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit going forth? I think more so, and I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I think it's also based off of the attitude of the actor and how they portray themselves of going forth with something. And I don't know if she was just being very difficult with, the decision making of saying, no, said you were going to give me this. I want this and I want this now. Otherwise, here's the repercussions of it. Disney refused, and Disney kind of bit back with those comments. I mean, was it the best way that Disney did it? No, they probably could have handled it a little bit better. But being with Disney's reputation, I don't think that they would make certain assumptions like that unless they knew something was really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, they renegotiated the Rock's contract, you know, and they worked something out with Emma Stone. And I just find it hard to believe that they're just, for some reason, just, yeah, you know what? We're just not going to work with we're just not going to work with ScarJo. Man,
and you have to really think Scarlett Johansson had a longer history with Disney than Emma Stone.
Absolutely.
I mean, her whole career was brought on from Marvel, that they could have thrown her in any kind of Marvel film or part of the franchise. Emma Stone is almost like a one-tone way of just with Cruella. I mean, they could still use her for other things. But Scarlett Johansson already had a foundation set for her with Marvel, and they were already going into talks for the Tower of Terror movie. Why would Disney want to lose money on that?
It doesn't make any sense, George. And that's why I keep coming back to there's something that ScarJo was asking for that Disney, it was out of pocket. It was too extreme for Disney, you know, and that's what's causing the stalemate. And a lot of people, and look, I hate this because people make me defend Bob Chapek, and I don't really like Bob Chapek, but people make me defend him because I feel like a lot of times I feel like he's unfairly targeted. You know what I'm saying? But like, I don't know. I lost my train of thought, but I just feel that, you know, I just feel like, you know, in terms of this whole situation.
Well, it's honestly. Oh, go ahead before you forget.
I was just saying, it came back to me. It's like people are criticizing Bob Chapek, like, oh, you know, well, you know, he's abandoning talent and he's walking away from working a deal out with ScarJo. Okay, but here's the thing, and this is where I think it's unfair for Bob Chapek. Bob Iger did the same exact thing with the state of California. He was on that economic recovery board with Governor Gavin Newsom, right? Mm-hmm. The implications, the ramifications of that board and getting Anaheim back up and running were massive. And what did Bob Iger do when he couldn't come up with a deal with Governor Newsom? He quit the economic recovery board and walked out.
Yep.
Okay. So that's okay. With the massive ramifications that could hold for the Walt Disney Company, that's okay. But Bob Chapek, when he comes up across a deal with ScarJo and she's asking for too much or she's out of pocket, he can't do the same. Why? Why not? Yeah. I think it's so unfair of the fan community to kind of do that. In my opinion, I don't know. But what were you going to say?
And not to really turn this political, but it's sort of like the same way. Like you can have either the left side or the right side, you know, whatever side you're on, you know, no judgments here, but it's like, depending on who is in, you know, the presidential seat at the time, just because it's someone that you may not like or you disagree with, it's like, no matter what they do, they're wrong.
Right.
But if it was somebody on your side, it's like, well, I can understand they did it for this reason. They did it for this cause. So it's a double standard. It really is.
Do you remember, and then we'll get to our next question, but do you remember the Barron's interview that Bob Iger had in regards to Expedition Everest? Where remember that? Yes. And he
my gosh.
And he said in that interview that Expedition Everest is a nondescript mountain themed to India or something. And I'm not even kidding when I said
I do remember that. And he didn't even have the right continent.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So that's okay. Imagine if Bob Chapek said that. So that's all I'm saying is that I think that we just have to take away the personalities, okay? Chapek is not a likable guy. Bob Iger is much more likable. but we have to take things at face value a little bit and stop. We have to kind of remove the bias a little bit and understand that, you know what, decisions have to be made, and try to see it from a non-biased perspective.
And I know you're religiously big on this statement, and actually I agree with you on it. Is just because someone has the title of CEO, not every decision that's made within the company is solely based just on that one person because they're CEO. There are
Right.
thousands of other people that, you know, it has to go up to him, but there are thousands of other people that, you know, can make a break or deal too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's pivot, and that's great. That's exactly correct, George. Let's go ahead and pivot now to our third and final question, which I think is actually a really cool question from Kadu Rodriguez. And Kadu writes, is there any Disney attraction you felt changed your life in a meaningful way after riding, or at least reading about it? Perhaps like usually happens with movies for most people. So George, I'll start with you. Do you have an attraction like that really like changed your life in any meaningful way?
I actually do. And believe it or not, I actually have two for two
Okay,
different reasons. And actually, one is
cool.
at Walt Disney World and one is at Disneyland.
Go ahead.
For many of you that, you know, don't know, that it took me a long time to actually visit Disneyland. I was a late bloomer with that. I actually turned 21 when I got to experience my first time at Disneyland. So I'm an East Coast guy, been to Walt Disney World many times, but with growing up as a single child with a single parent, it was very difficult to, you know, save up money to go on these Disney trips. And it took quite some time, but my mom actually, you know, saved and did everything in her power to actually get me to Disney because that's where I wanted to be. And I'll never forget the first time of actually going to Walt Disney World. My very first attraction that I rode was Big Thunder Mountain. So I have a special place for Big Thunder just because that was my very first Disney ride ever.
Cool.
That was like the first. I don't even know what drew me to that at that time. It was just, hey, it's a roller coaster that looks fun. A runaway train through a Western mountains type of aspect. It's like, yeah, let's go for it. So anytime I go to Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World, Big Thunder Mountain is, whether I don't even have to go on it as the first ride, but just anytime that I approach that ride, it just brings back that memory of it being the very first ride that I experienced at Walt Disney World. At Disneyland, it's actually Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay.
Because from being at Walt Disney World many times and experiencing Pirates, it's like, oh, this is a really cool ride. Well, after riding Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland, Walt Disney World's version, it's basically as if you were to watch the film Jaws and just stop midway through. or actually take a Pirates movie, for instance. Watch one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, go halfway through the film and turn it off. It's like, cut it right in half. And it's funny. It's like, how does it end? Like, how does it just, Walt Disney World's Pirates is so short, and it doesn't have a distinct storyline. And when I went on Pirates at Disneyland for the very first time, I thought, this is what it's all about. Right. This is the classic traditional Pirates that Walt envisioned. From like beginning to end, it has a full flush storyline, and it's one of my favorite attractions when I go to Disneyland.
Interesting. Awesome. Yeah, Pirates at Disneyland is unmatched. It's incredible. I love that attraction. So Kadu, I actually don't have an attraction that changed my life in a meaningful way, but I do have a parade that changed my life in a meaningful way. And that is the Main Street Electrical Parade. And the reason why it changed my life, or it kind of stuck with me, it has a place in my heart forever, is because my grandmother passed away in 2003. And her favorite thing in the world for Disneyland was the Electrical Parade. You know, she would always save us a seat on Main Street for that parade. She loved it. She would always kind of like give my dad like a hard time Like, how come you can't do the lights that great? Like for Christmas, Disney's able to do it. Like she always used to talk shit, and it was hilarious. And it was really, really cool. And so that, because of that connection of that parade with my grandmother, that parade means a lot to me. So it's not an attraction per se, but it is an element of the Disney experience. And that means the world to me. So that is one thing that really means a lot to me. So I don't really have like an attraction though that I have to go on or that really changed my life. I've been going to Disneyland since before I can even remember. I don't remember my first time. So I don't really have like any of that like first ride kind of thing like you do, George. I just it's kind of always been a thing. So yeah, Main Street Electrical Parade is the one thing that I have that I feel like has a real emotional connection for me personally.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I hear it's coming back.
That's the rumor. It's coming back to Disneyland. I mean, it's weird. I mean, hey, I'll take it. I'll take it. Like I said, I have a personal connection to the Main Street Parade. I love it. But it's weird to me. Like, you guys got to get a little bit of love in Florida with these nighttime parades. I mean, we've had
we had Spectra Magic for how many years, and then it went to the Electrical Parade, back to Spectra Magic, and now nothing.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And Paint the Night, I think that parade is dead. Like, I don't think anyone.
That's right. Then we did get Paint the Night for a brief period of time. I think we did. I believe so. No.
Yeah, no, I don't think you guys got that.
No, I don't think. No, we didn't get Paint the Night.
Yeah, it was Disneyland. I think.
Then it went to DCA.
DCA. Then they just ended it. And I think they retired that parade because I think cast members were actually getting hurt on that attraction. It was causing a lot of workers' comp claims.
I heard that.
Yeah. That's what I'm hearing. I could be wrong if you're a cast member.
And the thing with Paint the Night, it kind of reminds me of how like what they do with Mickey's Mixed Magic. It's a good show, but it's not timeless that it could stick around for many years.
Yeah, it feels more like a DCA parade, to be honest, because it's really Pixar heavy.
Pixar, yes.
The music is very modern and techno and like, very beat driven. It doesn't have that same whimsy that like the Main Street Electrical Parade has that fits Disneyland more. You're right, George. It does. It feels a little bit more modern. So it would be perfect for DCA. It would be perfect for a park like Hollywood Studios. But it just doesn't. Yeah, it's not really a Castle Park kind of parade. It really isn't.
No, it isn't. It really isn't. I did enjoy Spectra Magic. I don't think. No, you haven't experienced Spectra Magic. It was only at Walt Disney World. But I tell you what, the first time that I got to see the Main Street Electrical Parade, for me, especially with Pete's Dragon, Elliot, and they had Pete sitting on the back neck of Elliot, and like the smoke is coming out of his nostrils, and it's like, I mean, that's classic. It's just you see the Alice in Wonderland like mushrooms, filled with the lights, are coming. It's perfect.
It's so good. And that beginning always gives me goosebumps. When the music, whoa, and all the lights go out. Dun, 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 dun. It's just so good. It's so, so good. Like, if they're not going to bring back Paint the Night, at least update the lights on the Electrical Parade. Maybe add a couple floats, kind of like what Tokyo did, with Dream Lights.
Mm-hmm.
Give us like kind of like a 2.0 Electrical Parade.
Yeah. I personally feel that the Main Street Electrical Parade should just stay. If they want to make some enhancements, some updates, not too modern, not too techno, but I think to try to keep it as a classic electrical, that should stay at Disneyland.
Yeah, it's a very whimsical kind of thing, and I think it should be at Disneyland. It doesn't. They tried to do it at DCA. It didn't really work, in my opinion. There's some things that work in some parks and some things that don't,
Yeah.
And they try, sometimes Disney tries to pigeonhole these things and it just doesn't really work, but very, very interesting. But thank you, Kadu. Appreciate the question. And thank you, George, Mr. Family Man, for coming on and answering some questions with me. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me on. As I said, it's always great to come on and talk some Disney and answer questions. It's always fun.
It is. It is. And for those of you at home, Disney Family Man 23 has his own YouTube channel. I will link it down below. Check him out, watch his videos, subscribe to him. He does great content. He's a friend of the channel. Watch him. And he has more of a Walt Disney World point of view. So you're getting something different than what you're getting here. I'm more Disneyland Resort. So George is more Florida. So check him out. You know, if you're into Florida, Epcot, all that good stuff, the cruises, he's your guy.
Thank you very much.
So
yeah. Anytime, if anybody has any questions, go on my channel, look it up. If you have any questions, hit down at the comments below, and I'll answer your questions. And who's to say, I may get a Q&A started on my channel.
You should. You should. Have you ever done a Q&A, George?
No, not yet.
Oh, come on. Let's do it. Let's do it.
We'll have to do a Q&A.
We'll do a Q&A for sure. We'll do a Q&A. Put it out there, like either on Twitter. Twitter probably gets more traction. I noticed that with my own channel, at least. Like I get a lot more questions on Twitter. But you can do both. You can do your community tab or Twitter and see what you get. And then yeah, we'll do like a Q&A on your channel one day. That'd be great, man.
Awesome.
That'd be great. So yeah, check him out, subscribe to him. And thank you all so much for watching this part 2 Q&A. We will definitely do more Q&As going forward. Comment below with a Q&A question for a future video. And smash that like button. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.